Okay, we're still in January, and book 16 is The Institute by Stephen King. I am a Stephen King reader. I read many of his books. I really like this one. I think it's from a few years ago. I gave it a 4. The general story follows Luke, who wakes up in this institute with a bunch of other kids who seem to have either telekinetic powers or telepathy powers. And of course, sort of the evil government trying to use those as a weapon. I'm not going to give any spoilers, but, it reminded me a little bit of Firestarter. But I really liked how he wrote the characters. It's a long book, 500 pages, but it actually read pretty fast, and I would recommend it. I thought it was really good. Book 17 is Medusa's Sisters by Lauren J.A. Baer. I like mythology, and I liked how this story, which is the story of the Gorgons and their sister Medusa. So there's basically 3 sisters, and the Gorgons are named in this book, but, in history, they're just the Gorgons. So it's somewhat interesting. And I thought the characters were well thought out and multi-layered. They started out looking very humanoid or like humans, and then as the story goes, they made Athena angry, and she turned Medusa into the monster that she was, but also her sisters were put into that. And in this story, they all have snakes for hair, and they all can turn men to stone. And I just, thought it was very interesting. They had interesting interactions with each other. And some of it she took from true mythology, and some of it she just made up. And I would recommend it. I gave it a 4. And then book 18 is The Moorings of Mackerel Sky by M.Z. This is a story of a lobster town in Maine that has this big rich history of their founding and relationship to mermaids. And, there's some tours around that. It's a relatively short book. It's only a couple hundred pages. There's 3 kind of main stories. There's like the founding story, but then you have a story of a boy who has a troubled home, was being helped by a woman. You have a high schooler who's kind of discovering his sexuality, and then you have a high school teacher who is very depressed, and she misses her husband and her daughter. And those characters are decent, and I cared about them. The way the story kind of ended at the end was fine. I wish that it had been more forefront in the story and not just kind of brought up at the end. I mean, it was okay for me. I gave it a 3. I would probably recommend it as a vacation read, but it was fine.